Welcome to my cozy little corner, and today we are going to do the very late mid-year freakout tag. This probably should have went out like a month ago, but it didn't, and that's okay. I still want to talk about a lot of the books that I read and just have a nice little mid-year check-in because I've had a phenomenal reading year. I've been reading some really, really good books, and I have way more good than bad, so I want to talk about them. So, before we get into this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, look out. I have a lot of really fun planned vlogs coming out. I finally got a car back, so I feel like I can actually do the things that I want to do in a lot of these vlogs coming up, especially since it's about to be my birthday. Yeah. Anyways, let's get into this mid-year freakout tag. I got my handy dandy notebook to help me remember everything. I don't know who the original creator of this tag is. I think at this point, if you've been on BookTube at all, you have seen probably all of your like people you watch already done this tag. So you've probably heard the spiel already, but it's been done for like 10 years at this point. And I just went to one of my people I watch and I found the questions. That's what the mid-year freakout tag is. It's just a way to kind of check in mid-year and see what our reading's like. So the first question is the best book you've read so far in 2026. I'm gonna be honest, I've read so many good books, I couldn't just pick one. And this also prompted that probably the next video is going to be all of my 5-star reads so far this year because I've just read so many good books. Thank God. I feel like I'm really honing in on what I like, and I am somebody who reads every genre known to man. And so I don't like focus on very many genres. Uh, but with that being said, I feel like I'm really figuring out, regardless of the genre, what are the specifics that I like in books, and I've been able to really find out the books are going to work for me, and so I've been having a really good reading year. I have 5 here though to talk about, so I'll try to go through these fairly quickly. The first one, The Reformatory. This is about a boy in Jim Crow South that can see ghosts, and he commits a crime and gets sent to a reform school, which has a lot of disgusting history and secrets behind it. And his ability to be able to talk to ghosts helps him navigate being in this horrendous place and also helps him find out the secrets while he's there. And then on the flip side, you also get his sister's point of view, who is like the eldest sister. And her whole thing is trying to get him out because he shouldn't be there. This is probably one of like, I've read a lot of hard books this year, I would say, but this book wasn't easy to read. If this book doesn't make you mad, I kind of want you away from me because this should definitely make you mad. It's a phenomenally written book. It kind of introduced me to Southern Gothic, which is now becoming my current hyperfixation. Yeah, The Reformatory. Next, I'd say Mary. Summerween came and has decided it's staying. And so I've been reading horror again, which I was a big horror hater up until last year when I read a few horror books and realized I don't dislike horror. I'm just picky with my horror. Mary is such an interesting book. I don't even really know how to like describe Mary without giving away too much, but it's essentially about this older woman. I believe she's 49 and she's about to turn 50, which it's always great getting older characters. And so basically, this woman is from Arizona and she's currently living in New York, and she loses her job, her rent goes up, she really needs money, and her aunt, I believe, calls her up. They don't have a great relationship, and her aunt is like, hey, yeah, I need you to come take care of me. She doesn't want to do that, but she offers her a lot of money, and when she gets back in the town, she starts to hallucinate. She starts to see like ghosts, and she starts to see women with hoods on their heads and a lot of other really creepy things. And the whole book is just really like you and her trying to figure out what is going on in her head, and is it real, is it just her going crazy, because she's also going through menopause, which is like what this author does to tell this story. And like, I don't understand how this man was able to write this 50-year-old woman in such an accurate and responsible way. Like, it doesn't feel like a character, and it definitely feels like he poured his heart and his soul into writing this character. And I would also say the author's note made this book 10 times better at the end. There's an author's note in the beginning, but there's an author's note at the end that, in my opinion, I questioned whether or not he had the jurisdiction to write this story. And he answers that question head on, sort of, kind of, in the author's note, and it just makes the entire experience of reading the book 10 times better, in my opinion. I'm gonna read more Nat Cassidy. I loved this book. I'd say A Thousand Splendid Suns. This follows two women who end up married to the same guy. It's historical. I think it's the Middle East. I read it so long ago, and I've read a lot of books, so I'm having a hard time remembering details. But I cried like a baby, and that's one of the questions, so we'll get there. But this book was so good. If you like historical fiction in any sense of the word, I highly recommend this book. This book is so harrowing, but then by the time it ends in a way where it still feels heartfelt. I don't know. I loved this book, obviously. Next, I'd say the stationery shop. I would say everything I said about A Thousand Splendid Suns is exactly how I feel about the stationery shop. The stationery shop is about a girl in Tehran, I believe. I cannot remember, again, the exact dates, but it is historical. And essentially, it's very Notebook. And it's very, very Notebook, like the movie in the book. She falls in love with somebody, and then the politics of the time period and wars and all that jazz, politics and wars and all of that craziness affect her and the person she ends up falling in love with, which they meet in a stationery shop. That's why it's called that. This has like the yearning, and it has that same element, and I don't really feel like this is a spoiler. I think it's on the back of the book, but it's comparable to the Notebook because it has that kind of never end up together. They literally never end up together, and as you go through the journey of this book, you learn why. And then the end. book this book, it was very, very good, and it sticks in my brain for sure. And then the last one I want to talk about is Ascendant. So Ascendant is your classic boy with a dragon fantasy. I love this book in this series. I took a little bit of a break from it because it does feel like cozy weather, like I should read it during cozy weather, and so I've been kind of reading other stuff, and then I'll get back to it. Plus, I'm not really worried. I don't want to like get through it too fast. But this is about Holt, who is a kitchen boy, and well, he's a cook. He's a cook, and his family are cooks. And one day he finds a dragon's egg, and classic boy with their dragon fantasy assumes happens. um, this has every single trope in fantasy done in a like a modern way, or like a new, fresh, fun way. It's easy to read because it reads like all the great tropes, but it also has an insane emotional impact on top of the dragons. I love the dragons in the series. The personality of the dragons in the series carries the series, but not in a bad way. I love it. And then I'm listening to the audiobooks, and the voices for the dragons gives it even more of like a spice to the dragons' personalities, and I quite love it. Oh, the series just makes me feel so good. It makes me feel so happy, and even though it's at times very sad because it's fantasy and it's doing what fantasy is supposed to do, it's not cozy fantasy by any means. It still makes me really happy, and it still is just a great time. Kid you not, the vibes are immaculate right now. My coffee tastes really good. It is raining outside, so it's gloomy in the best way. I'm just in such a good mood right now. The vibes are immaculate. Let's do question two. So, question two is, what is the best sequel you've read so far? The first one, probably obvious. I read the second book in the Ascendant series, which was called Unbound. This was like the fellowship trope, I guess you could say, of like the books. Like it was very much like the fellowship. They were on a quest, and then they started kind of gaining a little crew. That's what this one felt like. And everything I just gushed about the first one, the second one. And then I'd say I have to give a shout out to Mercy Thompson. You're probably going to hear Mercy Thompson a few times. I've really been craving fun. I've read a lot of heavy horror books recently, a lot of heavy historical fiction books recently, a lot of heavy lit fic books recently, and Mercy came in clutch. I think I am falling headfirst into a like early 2000s paranormal romance hole. Um, this series is so good. This series is essentially about Mercy Thompson, who is she's a walker. Um, don't want to really explain too much what that is necessarily, but one of the things she can do is turn into a coyote. She was raised by werewolves, so it's an urban fantasy that is very like werewolf heavy, but it's got the vampires, it's got the fae. I've read the first three so far. I've read the first three. The second one really took the first one and elevated it. And honestly, the second book is vampire heavy, and that's kind of what I'm in the mood for currently. And so I think I just read the right book at the right time. But Mercy is so cool. She's older. Like, I feel like a lot of times in urban fantasies, they make the female, like the MMC, very young. And Mercy is older and cool and covered in tattoos. And like, she got a mouth on her and an attitude on her, and she's so fun. And this series has a very fun but subtle love triangle. It's got no smut. Like, don't expect smut in this at all, but because it's got a great plot. But the love triangle is fun. Like, I was like, girl. And honestly, at the point that I'm at, this love triangle is turning into a love square. And if this cop character gets involved, it's going to be a pentagon. It's getting crazy. I think everyone just wants Mercy. Okay, so question three is new releases you haven't gotten to. So I am horrible. I'm horrible when it comes to new releases. Yeah, that's just it. I really, really prefer reading older books. I feel like I got into reading fairly recently, and so new releases aren't really something I'm too worried about. But I will say that I've been trying to be a little bit better because there are some good ones, obviously. For a while, I was using my Spotify hours to do my new releases, and then I switched over. It was a whole thing. So I stopped using Spotify hours, which I'm going to probably have to get those back so I can catch back up on my new releases. But I would say the two, the two books that came out so far this year that I've been meaning to get to would be Burn Down Master's House. I don't know too much about this. I do know it's like a Southern Gothic. Honestly, I heard about this when it came out, and I've been meaning to get to it, and I might get to it soon. I might get to it like very, very soon because I'm in my Southern Gothic hole, like I said. That and my paranormal romances, which is a weird combination, but whatever. But that one, like I said, I don't know too much about it. I just know Southern Gothic. I don't know if it's horror necessarily, but I feel like there's aspects because anything set in that time period is going to be horrific. So there's that. And then the second one is Japanese Gothic. This book sounds so good. And to be honest, I haven't gotten to this one because I'm actually saving this one. I'm saving this one for the fall time. I think it will give a fun twist to like a haunted house. I don't think it's necessarily a haunted house. I think it's more parallel universes or time or something, but I don't know. It kind of gives haunted house. But it is, for as far as I know, it is a gothic horror book that takes place in like this house, and the two perspectives are like two different time periods. I'm not 100% sure on what time periods, but they're two time periods in the exact same house, and I think there's like a doorway or something. There's something that's connecting these two timelines in this house. I don't know. It sounds really, really good, but I really got to get to Japanese Gothic. Next, we have most anticipated release for the second half. Again, not super. I don't pay attention, like I said, so I kind of had to do a little bit of digging. I did forget that both of these books were coming out, and one of them is an instant. I'm probably going to pre order it without a doubt in my mind. It's probably the first time I'm going to read a book as soon as it comes out. And then the other one, I just loved the author. So we'll start with that one. Land by Maggie O'Farrell is coming out. I loved Hamnet, and I have two other books other than Hamnet on my, where's it at? This shelf. On my need to read TBR, physical TBR shelf. Every book on this shelf I have not read, but everything else I have read. And I need to get to those. But Land, I don't know too much about it, but I don't need to know. Maggie O'Farrell writing any sort of historical fiction will always be an instant buy for me. Her prose are just so gorgeous, and I just love a historical fiction that doesn't feel like the classic dual timeline. You know what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't know. There's just something about her historical fiction that just makes me so happy. So that's definitely on the list. My second most anticipated release for the second half, about choked on my coffee, is, I think it's called, yeah, Off the Reservation. The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones is probably the book that I say is the reason I realized that I don't, other than Stephen King, I don't dislike horror. I just like really well written horror. I love The Only Good Indians. I was planning on rereading it anyways. Like, I was planning on rereading it this year. And I was looking up new releases, and I was like, he's writing a sequel and it's coming out in October. So I'm definitely rereading it, and there'll probably be a vlog. Because I'm so excited. I was very interested to see, and I won't spoil anything, but I was very, very interested to see where it was gonna go. Like, the way the story ended, I was like, what do we have to talk about? But I think Stephen Graham Jones is he's kind of taking a direction of, maybe there's a lot of craziness in this world, and I don't think it's going to be necessarily connected to the events of the first one. At least that's how I'm feeling with the synopsis. I don't really know though, but I will say I'm very excited because I love Stephen Graham Jones. I've read another one of his books this year, and he will be, once I get caught up, he will be an autobi author from here on out. I just love him. Next, to kind of get in a little bit more of a negative note, unfortunately, let's talk about my biggest disappointments. I only have two to talk about. I don't finish books that I don't like. If I'm not vibing, I don't have the ability to force myself to push through. I actually think that I'm the opposite than most people. I should probably push through more often, but I just don't feel like it. I really don't. I'm like a mood reader to the max. If I had like hours to explain that to you, you'd be like, yeah. Like, it's like my mood reading is like complicated. Like, the way my brain works when it comes to reading is complicated. I could not push through a book if I tried. So that being said, I have a ton of DNFs, but they're not really worth talking about. But I have one DNF that made me really sad. And I think I am going to get back to it at some point just to see how it ends. But I was really sad about this book, and that was The Bones Beneath My Skin. I am a huge TJ Klune fan. Under the Whispering Door is one of my favorite books of all time, and House of Cerulean Sea was my introduction into TJ Klune. And he just writes like a cozy fantasy with a queer romance, usually a gay romance at the center. And this book was like his take on that, but it was more sci-fi and it was more thrillery. To be honest, I don't have exactly a reason why I didn't like it. It was that thing that I can't put my finger on why I was kind of bored. And then it was like I just kept reading other stuff. And then after like a month, I was like, I should probably just officially call this a DNF because I don't think I'm going to finish this book. I can't tell you why though. I liked it. I literally got to like the big reveal in the middle. Wasn't expecting what that was, but it didn't do anything for me. I don't know. I don't really know how to explain. I think that this is just a book that I need to come back to at a later time, but yeah, it just didn't hit the way Under the Whispering Door and House of Cerulean Sea did for me. So the second disappointment, I will say I will probably get crucified because oh girl got some fans, okay? I read my very first Kristen Hanna book and I loved it. Okay, I read The Great Alone and I loved it. I think every input in this book was meant for me, and so I think that that kind of skewed how I felt about the book. I immediately picked up The Women because I was like, yes, I think she's worth the hype. I think everyone's right. I read The Women and I hated it. I hated it. I actually finished it. I did. I did indeed. I actually finished it. I think the main reason why I finished it instead of DNFing it was because I had the audio and I don't think I had anything else to read while I was at work. So I was like, let me just finish it. And also, I was going to film a whole Kristen Hanna vlog. I was going to do a whole thing on my TikTok. And then this book single handedly put a stop to that. I hated it. I found Frankie insufferable. I found that there was just not enough character development when it came to Frankie. I found that unfortunately, Kristen Hanna loves a trauma dump. She loves a trauma dump. She kind of reminds me, and I feel like, I'm turning into hater Janae for a second, but I was really into Colin Hoover in the beginning until I read some more lit fic and I realized how you're supposed to handle trauma. Um, Pretentious, I know, but Kristen Hanna kind of reminds me of that. The trauma dump that was the last third of The Women made me want to pull my hair out. And there was one too many romance subplots with the same character, and I also hated the way she handled the side characters. We were like told she was the best of friends with these two other girls, and then we got to a certain point where there was a time jump and we were told so many things but never showed anything. So anytime these side characters were impacted by anything, I felt nothing. And that was just such a complete difference to how I felt during The Great Alone. I was so invested in every single character in The Great Alone and everything about The Great Alone that when I got to The Women and I wasn't connected in any way, shape, or form, it was so strange. I'm definitely going to give The Nightingale a chance because I liked one of her books, so she could probably do it again. But if you're someone who enjoyed The Women, I am so glad. I'm so happy for you. It was not for me. Next question is biggest surprise. I'd say two, I've already talked about them, but Mary, I was going to read his other book first. I had planned on reading When the Wolf Comes Home for my Summerween TBR. And then I think the hold hadn't came in yet, but Mary had, and I can't tell you what it was, but something was whispering in my little ear telling me, girl, you need to read Mary. You should read Mary. I think you should read Mary. I don't know what it was. I kept coming back to it and I was like, okay, I'm just going to do it. And I didn't really know too much about Nat Cassidy. I am always scared to read new to me horror authors. I tend to stick to the same horror authors because I'm very fickle with my horror. And he has now become someone that I will be reading more by. I love him, and I love the way he handled Mary. I know I said it already, but I'm gonna say it again. So yeah, that was a pretty big surprise for me because it was just a little voice telling me to read Mary, and it ended up becoming a 5 star. And then the second one, Mercy Thompson. Like I said, I was just really in the mood to read something lighter. And also, I haven't felt addicted to something in a really long time, minus maybe like TV shows. But even then, I don't feel like I've binged anything. I feel like it's been years, honestly, since I've wanted to like read something back to back to back to back. And my mom loves Mercy Thompson. And I've been meaning to get around to it. And when Audible had a really big sale a couple months ago, I was like, I bought the first 8 because I was hoping that it would become something I'd want to binge. And I just wasn't sure, especially since it's a 2000s paranormal romance. I was like, is it going to feel too 2000s? Is she going to be not like other girls? Like, is she going to be an insufferable person with an annoying love interest? And none of that was true, thank God. I am actually on the third book, and I am almost done with the third book. I think I have 2 hours left. I'm going to finish it today, and then I'll probably start the fourth book tomorrow. Yeah, so all that to say is I wasn't expecting to finally find something to be addicted to, and I finally found something to be addicted to. Next question is favorite new author. Right off the bat, Patricia Briggs, Mercy Thompson, and then the other one, I'd say S.A. Cosby. I've read 2 books by S.A. Cosby this year, Razorblade Tears and All the Sinners Bleed. I have a really hard time with thrillers. I say this a lot, but I really like to be super connected and super invested in characters, but B, I like a little bit of oomph to my writing, I guess. And I find that I struggle with thrillers because they sometimes can feel they're more plot heavy than anything else, and so the characters tend to get pushed to the side. And I will say that S.A. Cosby does his thing. He does his thing with his characters, and he's almost like literary fiction thrillers, but they're still plot heavy. Like they're definitely plot heavy, but in a good way. And they also read like movies. They read like cinematic movies. So I have a plan to get to his other books eventually, but yes, S.A. Cosby. Next is newest fictional crush. This was a really hard question for me because I don't really read romance anymore. I'm getting into it again a little bit, but more paranormal romances, specifically the 2000s. And I've been kind of sprinkling some contemporary romances here and there. I don't really feel like I have an answer to this question. I'd say the closest thing would be maybe I got weirdly obsessed with the like Grip series. I think that's what it's called by Kennedy Ryan. Kennedy Ryan is my if I want to read contemporary romance in any form, I just pick up a Kennedy Ryan book. That girl can write a contemporary romance. I don't feel like I have to question whether or not I'm going to enjoy it. She knows what she's doing. This series, I guess, the series is about a rapper. Yeah, it's about a rapper and his like she becomes his agent, I guess. The very first book is a novella, and it's like the week they met and the connection they made in that week. And then something happens at the very end, and then the official first book starts months, no, maybe even years later, and she comes back and they reconnect. And I'd say like I kind of liked Grip's little personality. I will say, like I liked his little, I don't know, his little persona. I guess I think that's the only one I would say that with. But yeah. And then newest favorite character. I kind of want to answer this question in two different ways. So I'd say like my current or newest favorite character, just like a character I enjoyed, um, like made me happy and I enjoyed, would be Mercy. Mercy is so goddamn cool. Okay, like I love the way she's described, like the way she looks, covered in tattoos. She's a mechanic. If I didn't mention that before, she's just so cool, and she's not like the other girls in a like non-iron. I don't know. It can be a little like on the nose, it being 2000s, but she doesn't necessarily. I feel like the other females don't like her, but she doesn't dislike the other female. I don't really know, but I love Mercy. That's all you need to know. And then I'd say the other way I want to answer this question is a character I just was so interested in following. I really, really loved following Vanessa in My Dark Vanessa. It wasn't always the easiest. This story is about Vanessa, who it's a dual timeline story, and she had a relationship with her teacher when she was 15. And in the present tense, another victim years later comes out. And so she starts to kind of go over the events that she experienced when she was in that relationship. And you kind of get the fallout and how that trauma has kind of manifested itself. And Vanessa is in denial for a lot of this book. And the way that she sees the relationship is not how the reader is going to see it, point blank, period. It's also very interesting. It brings up Lolita a lot, and it's very much like in conversation with Lolita. This book was so good, but I would say like following Vanessa's brain and how she justified certain things was just very, very interesting. And I just enjoyed following her the entire time. The author did such a good job of making it very realistic, making it to where I didn't want to like agree, or maybe I didn't agree with a lot of the choices she made or how she felt about certain situations, but I understood why her thought process was certain things and why she felt certain things about certain situations. Didn't quite agree, but I understood. And so it just made Vanessa a very interesting character to follow through the entire book. All right, so let's do a book that made me cry. I'm a crier, okay? So I actually this could probably be like a 10 book long list, but nobody has time to do that. So I'm just gonna talk about three. Let's just talk about three. So The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna, the book I mentioned earlier that I loved. This book is about a girl and her abusive dad. He's a veteran, and her dad, and her mom. He's a veteran of the Vietnam War, and it's like shortly after that they decide to move to rural Alaska and decide to like live off the land and try to survive in Alaska. And it's very much like Alaska's its own character, and the dangers and the nature is its own character, which is part of what I loved about it so much. But I'd say like this book, I cried multiple times. The main character, I felt for her so deeply, and I actually think the way that the author handled the trauma in this one was handled so much better. And it also didn't feel like I'm going to throw this and then I'm going to do this and then I'm going to give you this. Like it felt like there was like too many traumatic events in the women, and in this book it felt like it made sense. The trajectory of the traumatic events made sense. So yeah, I cried. And I'm so happy that I read this book at home. I had the audio, but I immersion read it, and I cried at home. Okay, I cried in my bed. I cried right there in my bed because I do listen to audiobooks while I'm at work, and I think one of these, oh yeah, one of these I cried while I was at work, which happens too often, unfortunately. That was The Great Alone. A Thousand Splendid Suns, I mentioned it already. This book made me cry so hard. Frequently will be like doing my job, which is very simple, do, and then I have to like turn around and stare at something so no one can see me, and like have to kind of try to get myself to not cry. The thing is I love very emotional stories, and I'm gonna cry if it's emotional. That's just, and I like a good cry as well. Thousand Splendid Suns was traumatic, and also I just love the way it ended. It was a happy end. Well, happy end. It was a happy cry by the end. So, yeah. And then the last book, Normal People. Okay, I got to give my normal people spiel for a second. I have hateritis. When a book becomes too big, I avoid it at all cost. I had been avoiding Normal People for so long, literally so long. Then one day, I was in the mood to binge like a limited miniseries that was extremely emotional, and I was like, okay, well, it sounds like you just want to watch Normal People. So I ended up binging it. The end made me cry like a baby. Like, if you read it and you've seen the show, you get it. But then, I kid you not, I literally went and bought the book the day I finished the show. And then I read the book and I cried at the end. I thought I wasn't going to cry at the end of the book because I knew how it was going to end. But maybe I'm tripping and it's possible, but I felt like the end of the show felt hopeful. And I don't know, I think I misinterpreted it, but the ending of the book, though it was the exact same scene, didn't feel as hopeful. I have no idea how to explain that, but regardless, I cried at the end of the book, even though I knew how it was going to end. And it was the exact same scene. Crazy. It's going to get cold if I don't drink it. Books that made you happy. Right off the bat, Mary. That's probably a weird answer. I love the way this book ended. This book, the ending made me so happy. And I honestly can't explain that to you unless you've read it. The ending, I felt like it delivered exactly what I wanted it to deliver for my girl Mary. And honestly, I'm gonna leave that question at that. Mary. Probably the book that made me feel the happiest. And also because I don't really read happy books. Like, I could probably give you a contemporary romance as one of those answers, but to be honest with you, it would just be a cop out. It would just be a cop out because I don't really read them that often. And so there's only like two on this list that aren't traumatic. So we have now come to the very last question. And that is, what book do you need to read by the end of the year? And I actually have two. I have two. So I have officially kind of entered my true self. Um, I started to celebrate Summerween all of July, and then July's about to end, and I'm not done. So July is probably going to turn into August, and then fall starts in September. So I'm knee deep. I'm knee deep in my fall ish fallish books, I guess you could say, autumnal feeling books, spooky books, as you can say. See, and yeah, I guess the two books are both, I guess, autumnal, I guess. So the first book is another book that I've been putting off because of hateritis, and that was, or is, Bunny by Mona Awad. I've been meaning to get to this book for a while, so this is on my 26 books of 2026. So we'll be getting to this. This is like a weird little dark academia book. I've heard it's very weird in a good way. I've heard it's very ambiguous as well. I'm very excited for that. And then the other book is The Historian. Now, I do have this book physically. I bought it randomly, to be honest. One person recommended it. And then I went on a little bit of a search to figure out what books I wanted to read during the fall. I do that frequently. I think I was literally planning my TBR for the fall for like 2 hours, and it's not done. I still got some slots I want to fill, but I was looking for vampire books, And I did not realize this book was a vampire book, okay? And so it immediately went up into my TBR because I'm very into, I don't know why, but I'm craving vampires. Maybe Mercy Thompson's helping with that, even though it's a werewolf centric book. I don't really know. Yeah. The Historian and Bunny are the two books that I'm really hoping to get to by the end of the year, which I have no doubt that I will. And I think that's it. So that is the end of my mid-year freakout tag. It is way past mid-year, but it's okay. At least I'm getting it out, you know? Life be life, and yeah. I hope to see you guys next time, and bye.